Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer LB8006-450-630. This is a 4.5 by 4.5 full mortise heavyweight lube bearing solid stainless steel hinge. Let's go over what this hinge is. We'll dissect the part number. Let's first start with a visual review of the item. First of all, what is this hinge primarily? It's a solid stainless steel hinge. Solid stainless steel hinge with a brushed finish. 4.5 by 4.5. 3-knuckle hinge, as you can see. What they call their lube bearing. It's also a heavyweight hinge. It's 180 thousandths thick. And the way to start this is to probably dissect the part number. I find that that's the true way to understand, or the best way really to understand, what the hinge is and what other options are. And let's start by looking at the catalog. Now I've got the catalog pulled up and I'll show you where to find that catalog. The first thing is in dissecting the part number, and this is where we are with the part number. LB8006, we're looking at that. And we'll look at the rest of it as well. LB hinge. Sorry, I'm just scrolling through to get to our LB on page AH1, at least of the catalog that I'm referring to. The lube bearing is a concealed bearing type of construction made from a special nylon bearing material and is maintenance free and requires little or no oil or grease. Well, that also translates to it being a 3-knuckle hinge as well. So if you're looking for a concealed bearing by Bommer, it'll be a 3-knuckle hinge. If you're looking for a 3-knuckle hinge by Bommer, it will be concealed bearing. So you get all of that in one. Now, I like the 3-knuckle hinge because I think it's really clean looking, and the reason that people, especially architects, will specify 3-knuckle hinges because of that exact reason. These ball bearing hinges with these exposed bearing packets, they can look a little busy on the door. Okay? And a 3-knuckle hinge is really great in that regard. Now, as we move further through the part number, we get to 8006. Now, that's quite a bit. Let's take a look at that as well. We'll scroll and get to the page, the ordering page, which is at page AH5. And we're going to start over in this part of the part number. LB, lube bearing. We're doing an 8006, so that's going to mean 3-knuckle. The 0 is going to mean full mortise. Let's take a closer look in terms of what full mortise means. Now, what full mortise means, of course, is going to be the swag line right here. The swag on the hinge leaf, this bend, that makes it full mortise. When those leaves are brought parallel, they're meant to be mortised flush to the edge of the door and frame. Okay? And that's what separates a full mortise hinge from a full surface hinge. A full surface hinge would not have any swag line here at all. Okay? You could lay that on your table and it will sit absolutely flat on the top of your desk. This will rock back and forth because it's full mortise. Okay? Let's take a look back at that how to order page. We get into the next value, style. That's called standard. That value, the 8006, it's a standard hinge, meaning it's not a slip-in hinge or an anchor hinge or a wide throw hinge. It is a standard butt hinge. The 6 in the part number, that's a pretty cool number. That means it's heavyweight and stainless steel. Okay. Now when we get over to the size, Bommer has a unique way to size their hinges. This is a 450, and a 450 from Bommer means that it is full mortise and 4.5 by 4.5. It means both of those things. Okay. If you had a full surface hinge or well, probably a half surface hinge, that's going to mean that you're not dealing with a height and a width. You're really just dealing with a height. So they changed it to 045. The point of the matter is they have a unique numbering system. Don't guess at it because you could guess wrong. I took a guess that hinges that were 5 by 4 and it didn't cause a mistake, but luckily I double checked. that a 5x4 is a 504 and not a 540. Okay, so just double check the chart when you're ordering it. Now we get into 630 at the very end of our part number, and that's going to mean a couple of things. Let's take a look at it. Now 630 is going to mean a couple of things. It's going to mean it's made of stainless steel. It's also going to mean that it is in a brushed finish. You could also order this in a 629, which would still be stainless steel. And if you're familiar with what stainless looks like, that's what stainless looks like. That's the hue, the color, the feel that you get when you see stainless steel. 629 would be solid stainless but polished. Okay. This hinge is obviously intended to carry a lot of weight, to most likely be installed in an exterior application where the base material is crucial to the longevity of the hinge. Okay, so we've dissected the part number. Let's scroll down and take a look at the extended description on this item. You know what? Let's back up. Let's dissect that size a little bit more. 450, 4.5, 4.5. That means that the first dimension is the height of the hinge. 4.5 by 4.5. The first 4.5 is the height. It's important to know the height on a hinge is the defining characteristic. Well, you need the height and the width, but the height, I think, is more important of the two, although they're both critical. One is absolutely mission critical, that height, because that's going to indicate how you're prepping the doors and frames in terms of the height of the hinge. The width is a number that may give you behavior out of the door that's not what you want, but you'll still hang the door. But if you've got the wrong height of a hinge, you'll have trouble. The height tells us a lot about the door. It tells us, gives us an indication of how heavy it is, the door is. Gives us an indication of how wide the door is. Gives us an indication of how thick the door is. Now, there's nothing to say that you can't use a 4.5-inch hinge on a 3-inch thick door. You can't, but you wouldn't. When you're following best practice, a 4.5-inch hinge, you're looking for an 1.75 inch thick door. Pretty typical. You got a 2-inch door, right? Or you could use a 5-inch. You could also use a 1.75 inch. You've got a 2.25. Now you're for sure at a 5-inch hinge. If you have a 4-inch, if you have an 1.75 inch door, you could also use a 4-inch. But are we talking commercial or residential? So this gives an indication of the thickness of the door. Also tells us the weight of the door, meaning what's the performance envelope of a hinge that is 4.5 inch tall. Depends on the volume of use. You know, depends on the thickness of the hinge as well. And I'm going to pull up a chart that will allow me to give you an idea of what weight range based on door volume, what weight of the door, and what sort of usage is happening on the door. So we have here a 4.5 inch tall by 4.5 inch wide heavyweight hinge. In discounting the base material, which I can't tell you if it plays a significant role at all, I doubt that it does. Steel versus stainless versus brass or bronze. So if we're dealing with a 4.5 by 4.5 heavyweight, looking at a pretty generic chart, we're going to go from a door that's going to be light, 100 pounds. You could use it on a 100-pound door. That would be able to be very high volume use. You get yourself up into a 125 pound, up to 175 pound. You're still going to be in the range up to 175 pounds that it would be considered compliant with a high usage door, several hundreds or thousands of cycles a day. You get yourself into a range of 225 pounds. Now we're falling into a medium sort of usage. You get up to a door that's going to be looking at pushing 300 pounds. Now that's going to be a very occasionally used door, very low frequency use. Generally, I find the cutoff is 225 pounds. You start to think a 225-pound door, I'm thinking let's not talk hinges, because only a low use door would be okay with a 4.5-inch heavyweight hinge, just low usage. You know, a janitor's closet. But where you can have a janitor's closet that heavy. What would be that heavy? Well, what would be that heavy would be a lead line door. Is that going to be low usage? Relatively. But where are they going to put a lead line door? Somewhere where there's going to be people in and out. You need to start thinking hinge pivots. Also, what's the cutoff for surface applied closers and how much weight they'll handle? About 225 pounds. So that to me is the cutoff to where I think we need to talk about or to change the conversation to a different hinge. Now, so that's the height. You increase that to a 5-inch tall hinge, you're basically increasing your capacity by 20% of what you can carry, what you can roll with. Now, the width is a different type of conversation. The width is a number that needs to be studied. Now, as we study the width of the hinge, and this is 4.5 wide, what we're really kind of concerned with is what dimension is a healthy dimension to have the vertical axis of pivoting as measured from the let's say the face of the door. Okay? That's the vertical axis of pivoting. I think that has everything to do with what's happening in this area. Okay? If you are doing a frame installation where you are wrapping the wall, okay, and forgive the very poor sketching, when you bring that door out over here, okay, now you got a couple of this happening. What do you need for clearance in here? Okay, when you bring that door to 180 degrees, what is the relationship of this? Well, obviously when you're wrapping the wall, you'll have no problem wrapping the frame over the end of the wall. You'll have no problem going to 180 degrees. Now in this case, I'll tell you what best practice would be this same hinge, 4.5, but best practice would be 4-inch. Suck this back up towards the face of the jamb an additional 1/4 inch. It's a smarter look, it is a cleaner look, it is a more efficient hinge when it comes to carrying the load of the door. Okay. Now, what happens is when we get into a scenario where we are now doing where we are coming in with a bolt of some type, now that dimension is really important, because what is our degree of opening? If we are butting our frame up to a 8-inch CMU wall, what will it be then? The point of the matter is the width is a very almost ignored dimension because it works in most instances. However, a little bit of thought towards what that width dimension needs to be will give you the best application of hardware for the scenario. Okay, you might want to know what the degree of opening. This could be a service door in a restaurant, and you know they have, you know, the door is going to go to 110 degrees. That's what the closer is templated for. Okay, great. I have seen doors literally bent like this because they have been pushed out and hit that corner because the wind grabbed it, the closer ripped out, and the door kept going. Now, I'm not saying that you should consider wide throw hinges. What I would be saying is you should put an overhead stop in that scenario. But the point of the matter is thinking about where this dimension lies is truly the moral of the story. If it's wrapping the wall, 4-inch ought to be perfect. If it's otherwise, 4.5 is probably perfect, but it could probably be better as well. Now back to the finish. Stainless steel with a brushed finish happens to be the most durable of all natural finishes. Artificial finishes would be a steel or a brass-based material with a satin chrome plating. That would be the most durable of all artificial finishes. But in terms of natural finish, solid stainless with a brushed finish will be the best, long-lasting. There's a link below this video to the template. Let's take a closer look at that. Now, here's the template, and this is going to show you the location of the screw holes in relationship to the leaf. And the A dimension is the swag, is the line from the edge of the leaf to the swag. And as you study that dimension, you'll see how it changes. From 4.5 inch wide to 4 inch wide, you're picking up a 1/4 inch of bringing that in. The 0 here versus the 1, or the 0 here versus the 1 means wide throw. So when you get to these hinges that are wider than they are tall, again, super important to know what is the height. You don't want to tell someone 6 by 4.5 and you get doors prepped for 6 inch tall hinges and you've supplied 4.5 by 6. Gives you that A dimension. And again, tells you where your screw holes are so that you can determine where they are if you are supplying hinges or providing hinges, and you want to be sure that it matches. This happens to be a template, but it also happens to be the template pattern, and any hinge made, given its height, if it's a template hinge, it will observe these actual dimensions. Now they're different if it's a 4 inch hinge or a 5 inch hinge, meaning the height, but for a 4.5 inch tall, no matter who makes it, if it's a template hinge, they will fall in this location. Let's finish up this video. As we scroll down, we'll get to the extended description. You'll see that this is for a heavyweight, high-frequency door. Stainless steel hinge with a stainless steel pin. What I love about the LB8000 series is that it's a flush top pin, a flush pin. This isn't seated all the way down, but when it is, that basically will disappear into the top of the barrel. Okay? Non-rising removable pin means, you know, when you have a door in your house and it opens hundreds of times, sooner or later that pin starts to creep up because it's like you're extruding toothpaste out of a, toothpaste container. Same sort of concept. That pin just gets extruded up. This is a non-rising pin. Will resist that sort of tendency of the barrels working against each other, pushing that pin up and out. Heavyweight hinge. It's 180 thousandths. Let's put the sayer of truth onto the hinge and see how accurate it is. It is. Caliper says 0.183. That's not going to be a problem. 0.183. Okay. There are security options available, like non-removable pins. You can do a set screw drilled into the barrel so that from the outside you can't get to that set screw, all but eliminating the ability to drive that pin out. And isn't that a clean look? It just is. There's no doubt that that is a super clean look compared to a 5-knuckle hinge. Very clean look. You can do a safety stud where there'll be a disc attached to the hinge and a hole here so that when the leaves are closed, you can't separate the leaves from each other. There's also a maximum security, which are discs on the back side and then holes prepped into the hinge reinforcements on the door and the frame. You won't be able to spread that out at all. The Miami International Airport has NRP and security stud on them. I've walked past the hinges, the doors, and seen that. You can even do this with a radiused corner, should you need to. That wouldn't be unheard of, but would be very, very highly unlikely. I have sold heavyweight 4.5 to a 5 inch actually, with 5/8 radius. That's just what the client called out for. Screws are included. You'll notice that they only gave us half. They gave us all machine and half wood. You'll want to clarify at the time of order what screws you want. I know where these are going. This is a steel door and steel frame. Customer calls up and said, I didn't get enough wood screws. Okay, what's your door made of? Wood. What's your frame made of? Wood. Right, you didn't get enough wood screws because there's only half wood screws. When you're ordering the material, indicate in the comment field what you need. Machine by machine, wood by wood, half wood screws, half machine screws. Be clear about that so that, let's face it, you probably didn't check before you went to the job site, took the door down. I don't always either. but you don't want to get caught without the right screws. These are stainless steel screws. You're not just going to walk around and get a number 1024 flat undercut thread forming stainless steel screw at the local, big box store. So specify it. There's no reason that information is to not be clarified to the manufacturer when the hinges are ordered. They're expensive. You should get exactly the screws that you need. Finally, there's a link below this video to the manufacturer's page where you can pull up not only all of the Bommer products that we sell, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. I'm quite partial to Bommer. Last thing I'd show you is the logo. Right above it, it says Made in USA. That's a fact that Bommer is quite proud of, as am I to represent them. If you have any questions on the Bommer LB8006 and a 450 and a 630, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.